2:43 in the afternoon. The Indian Ocean appeared completely calm at that moment. A light wind moved slowly across the surface, creating only small ripples across the deep blue water. To anyone watching from a distance, it would have looked like just another routine day of naval movement in international waters. An Iranian frigate moved steadily across the ocean, maintaining a moderate cruising speed and a stable heading toward the west. The ship was returning after participating in multinational naval exercises days earlier. Most of the difficult work of the mission had already been completed. On the radar screens inside the vessel, the surrounding environment looked clean. No unidentified aircraft in nearby airspace, no destroyers visible on the horizon, no immediate indication of danger. On the deck, several sailors were performing routine equipment inspections. Others simply watched the distant horizon. Inside the operations room, officers monitored the navigation instruments with the calm focus typical of a ship returning from deployment. Everything appeared normal. But the real operational environment was not happening on the surface. Nearly 200 meters beneath the hull of the Iranian frigate, hidden in the near-total darkness of deep water, a United States Navy attack submarine remained completely still. Engines operating at the lowest possible output. Acoustic signature reduced to nearly nothing. To most conventional sonar systems, the submarine would have blended into the natural background noise of the ocean. Inside the submarine, the atmosphere was quiet. The narrow control room was filled only with the soft hum of electronic systems and monitoring equipment. Operators watched green displays and acoustic graphs, translating distant ocean sounds into analyzable data. Every ship's propeller produces a unique acoustic signature, a combination of vibration patterns, blade rotation, and mechanical resonance that can be identified by sophisticated underwater listening systems. Minutes earlier, the sensors had detected exactly such a pattern. The target had been identified. A mid-sized military vessel. Acoustic profile consistent with a modern frigate. Speed steady. Course predictable. The Iranian warship was moving directly across the submarine's listening zone. Inside the acoustic analysis station, an operator confirmed the data. Estimated distance, bearing, water depth. All parameters suggested a rare tactical opportunity. The submarine was positioned at an ideal interception point. Above them, the Iranian frigate continued moving forward, without any awareness of what was happening below. In modern naval warfare, this is often the most dangerous moment for any surface vessel. The moment when the adversary is already present, but still completely undetected. At 2:44 in the afternoon, additional data appeared on the submarine's displays. The frigate had slightly reduced its speed. That small adjustment made the firing solution even easier to calculate. The submarine's commander observed the monitors for several seconds. The decision forming in his mind would carry immediate consequences. Several factors had to be evaluated: positioning, detection risk, engagement distance, possibility of counter-response. Every variable had to be measured carefully. Meanwhile, aboard the Iranian frigate, routine operations continued. Officers discussed navigation adjustments for the following days at sea. Crew members prepared for the next watch rotation. No alarms had been triggered. No sonar operator had reported an unknown contact. One of the greatest ironies of modern naval warfare is that the most serious threats often exist entirely outside the range of conventional awareness. Submarines are built precisely for this purpose: to remain invisible, to remain silent, to wait. At 2:45 in the afternoon, inside the American submarine, the commander finally spoke. The order was brief: prepare weapons. Immediately, the crew began the standard procedures required for a possible engagement. Trajectory calculations appeared on the fire control systems. Target speed, course vector, estimated interception window. Each variable was fed into the attack computer. Above them, the Iranian frigate continued sailing peacefully through the open ocean. The crew still had no idea. But at that moment, in the silent depths directly beneath their hull, an enemy submarine was already prepared to act. And once the next order was given, the entire situation would change within minutes. At 2:45 in the afternoon, the balance of the situation quietly shifted. Inside the American submarine, the control room remained dim and controlled. Red tactical lighting illuminated the consoles, while crew members moved with practiced precision. Every action followed procedure. Every sound was kept to a minimum. The target had now been tracked long enough to establish a reliable solution. Distance, stable. Course, predictable. Speed, moderate. For submarine warfare, those conditions are almost ideal. Surface warships rely heavily on radar and aerial awareness. They scan the horizon and the skies, searching for threats that might approach from a distance. But submarines operate in a completely different domain. They attack from below. And when a submarine is positioned correctly beneath the surface, detection becomes extremely difficult. Inside the Iranian frigate, the crew believed they were operating in relatively safe waters. The region was not an active combat zone, and the vessel had recently completed cooperative exercises with other naval forces. Operational posture reflected that assumption. The sonar system was active, but not in full wartime search mode. Sonar operators were monitoring background noise and shipping traffic rather than aggressively scanning for silent underwater threats. That decision, small as it seemed, created the opening. In submarine combat, detection is everything. The side that hears first usually wins. At 2:46 in the afternoon, the submarine's acoustic team updated the contact profile. The target's propeller pattern was now perfectly clear. Each rotation produced a rhythm that could be followed precisely through the water. The fire control computer processed the information continuously. Target bearing, relative movement, water temperature layers, even subtle variations in ocean density can affect how sound travels underwater. All of those factors must be calculated before a weapon is launched. The attack submarine had already solved most of those variables. Now the commander had to decide whether to engage. He leaned slightly toward the tactical display while officers around him waited. Submarine commanders are trained to make decisions quickly, but never impulsively. Every engagement carries risk. Launching a torpedo reveals the submarine's approximate location. Even if the weapon hits its target, enemy forces may attempt counter-detection afterward. The safest attack is one executed with precision and speed. At 2:47 in the afternoon, the final firing parameters appeared on the control screen. The solution was clean. Minimal target maneuvering, strong acoustic lock, high probability of intercept. The commander gave a short confirmation. Proceed with launch preparation. Immediately, the torpedo crew moved into action. Inside the submarine's forward compartment, a heavy weapon already rested inside a launch tube. This was a modern guided torpedo designed specifically for anti-ship warfare. Its purpose was simple. Locate a vessel, track its acoustic signature, destroy it below the waterline. Back in the control room, the launch sequence moved step by step. Target bearing confirmed. Weapon guidance mode selected. Initial trajectory calculated. Unlike missiles or aircraft weapons, torpedoes operate inside the complex environment of the ocean. Water pressure, currents, and acoustic reflections all influence their path. Modern torpedoes compensate for those factors automatically, adjusting course while moving toward their target. At 2:48 in the afternoon, the submarine reached the final phase of preparation. Silence inside the control room deepened. Crew members spoke only when necessary. The commander observed the countdown display. Above them, the Iranian frigate continued its course across the open sea. The bridge crew saw nothing unusual. Navigation officers maintained course. Engine room personnel monitored propulsion systems. No one on the surface realized that the situation had already passed the point of reversal, because once a torpedo leaves its launch tube, events move quickly. At 2:49 in the afternoon, the order was given. Fire. Inside the launch tube, compressed air pushed the weapon forward. The torpedo left the submarine silently and entered the dark water of the Indian Ocean. Within seconds, its propulsion system activated. Guidance sensors began searching for the acoustic signature already stored in memory. The sound of the frigate's propellers. Above the ocean floor, the weapon accelerated and adjusted its path. The distance between hunter and target began to close. Meanwhile, on the Iranian warship, the crew continued their routine operations. The ship moved forward through calm waters. No alarms had sounded, no warning signals had appeared, but deep below the surface, the critical phase of the encounter had already begun. and within minutes the crew on the surface would understand that something had been terribly miscalculated. At 2:49 in the afternoon, the torpedo was already moving. Beneath the surface of the Indian Ocean, the weapon accelerated through the dark water with controlled speed. Its internal guidance system immediately began tracking the sound it had been programmed to follow: the rotating propellers of the Iranian frigate. In underwater combat, sound becomes the primary target marker. Engines, propellers, and hull vibrations travel through water with remarkable clarity. To a guided torpedo, that sound is like a beacon. The weapon adjusted its trajectory automatically. Small fins corrected its course as it closed the distance. Above the waterline, nothing seemed different. The frigate continued its route across the open ocean. The bridge crew maintained their navigation pattern. Inside the ship, sailors moved through corridors, performing routine checks and monitoring standard ship operations. No alarms had been triggered, no sonar warning had been issued, because at that moment, the torpedo was still outside the range where its approach might be detected. Underwater engagements unfold in silence until the final seconds. At 2:50 in the afternoon, the weapon had already covered a significant portion of the distance between the submarine and the frigate. Inside the submarine's control room, the crew monitored telemetry data from the weapon. Course tracking, stable. Acoustic lock, confirmed. Interception time, decreasing rapidly. The commander remained focused on the tactical display. Every second now moved the situation closer to its outcome. Meanwhile, aboard the Iranian frigate, one of the sonar operators began to notice something unusual: a faint acoustic disturbance. At first, it appeared to be nothing more than interference. Ocean currents and distant ship traffic can create similar patterns on sonar screens. But within seconds, the signal became clearer: a fast-moving underwater object, approaching. The sonar operator adjusted the gain and examined the waveform more closely. The pattern was unmistakable: a torpedo signature. His voice broke the calm inside the operations room. Possible incoming contact. Within moments, the atmosphere inside the ship changed completely. The bridge ordered immediate verification. Additional sonar checks confirmed the worst possibility. The weapon was already close. Emergency procedures began instantly. Engine power increased. Helm adjustments attempted to alter the ship's direction. Crew members rushed to damage control stations. But in torpedo warfare, timing determines survival. The earlier a threat is detected, the greater the chance of evasive maneuvering. In this case, the warning came too late. At 2:52 in the afternoon, the torpedo reached the final stage of its attack. Instead of striking directly against the hull, the weapon aimed beneath the vessel. This is a deliberate design feature of modern naval torpedoes. Detonating under a ship creates a powerful gas bubble that violently lifts the hull out of the water before collapsing again. When the bubble collapses, the ship loses structural support. The keel experiences enormous stress, and the hull can break. At 2:52 and several seconds, the explosion occurred. A violent underwater detonation erupted beneath the Iranian frigate. The force lifted a massive column of water into the air. Inside the ship, the shockwave slammed through internal compartments. Metal structures twisted, lights flickered and failed. The deck shuddered as the vessel suddenly lost stability. Within seconds, water began flooding damaged sections of the hull. Crew members struggled to understand what had happened. Emergency alarms echoed throughout the ship. Damage control teams moved toward the lower compartments. But the damage was already catastrophic. The explosion beneath the hull had fractured the ship's structural backbone. The vessel began to bend. Within minutes, the bow and stern experienced uneven buoyancy. Water poured into internal compartments faster than pumps could remove it. Meanwhile, far below the surface, the American submarine had already begun withdrawing from the engagement zone. Engines remained quiet. Depth changed slowly. The submarine turned away from the site, disappearing once again into the darkness of the ocean. Above the surface, the Iranian frigate was fighting for survival, but the physics of underwater explosions had already determined the outcome. In less than 10 minutes, a routine naval transit had transformed into a catastrophic maritime disaster, and the lesson of the encounter would echo far beyond that stretch of ocean. Modern naval power is not always visible. It often waits silently beneath the surface. and when it acts, the entire balance of the battlefield can change in a matter of minutes.
To most conventional sonar systems, the submarine would have blended into the natural background noise of the ocean.